Welcome to the deep dive. We're looking at something pretty important today. How financial advisors here in the U.S. are supposed to be looking out for you.
That's right.
Specifically, Regulation Best Interest, or Reg BI. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding what it is, why it actually matters if you've got investments, and, well, what it means for the advice you're getting.
It's a key piece of regulation.
Yeah. And our guide here is an article, Regulation Best Interest, Reg BI, FinCrime Intelligence. Our mission. Simple. Cut through the jargon, figure out these core obligations, and see how they're meant to protect investors. You. Okay, let's jump in.
Okay, so Regulation Best Interest, Reg BI, it's basically a set of rules from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it sets this new standard for broker-dealers and, their financial advisors.
The new standard. How so?
Well, the core idea, and this is what's really key, is that when they give you the retail customer investment recommendations, they legally have to act in your best interest.
Your best interest, not just something generally suitable.
Exactly. The whole point is making sure your financial well-being comes first. It's about prioritizing you over, say, the firm making more money or the advisor getting a bigger payout.
Okay, so it's like trying to level the playing field a bit. The source mentions it was about closing some kind of gap. What was that?
Yeah, precisely. For a long time, there was this pretty noticeable difference in how broker-dealers were regulated compared to registered investment advisors, or RIAs.
RIAs, right? They had a different duty.
They did. RIAs have operated under what's called a fiduciary duty for ages. That's a very strict, very high standard obligation to always put their clients' interests first. Reg BI was really brought in to lift the standard for broker-dealers closer to that, specifically when they're providing advice.
Okay, so the old standard was suitability. Now it's best interest. They sound kind of similar. What's the actual difference on the ground?
That is a really crucial distinction. Suitability basically meant the recommendation just had to, generally fit your financial picture and goals.
Sort of fit the box.
Kind of, but best interest demands more. Let's say there are two investments, pretty similar. Option A pays your advisor a higher commission than option B.
Okay.
Under the old suitability rule, recommending option A might have been fine if it generally matched your needs. But under best interest, your advisor has to actively consider if option B, the one with the lower commission, is actually better for you.
Even if it means less money for them.
Exactly. Even if it means less money for them or the firm, the focus really shifts to minimizing those conflicts of interest and putting your financial outcome first.
Okay, that makes more sense. It sounds more active.
Yeah.
So how does Reg BI actually make sure this happens? What are the nuts and bolts? What do broker-dealers have to do?
Right. So Reg BI lays this out through 4 core obligations. They work together. First up is the disclosure obligation.
Disclosure, meaning they just have to tell you things.
Pretty much, but specific things. They need to be really upfront about the important details of their relationship with you. So clearly explaining the scope of services they provide, laying out all the fees, no hidden charges, and, this is critical, fully disclosing any conflicts of interest.
Conflicts like getting paid more for certain products.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly like that. They have to tell you if that's happening. And they also need to be very clear about the capacity they're acting in. Are they a broker-dealer in this interaction? Because that impacts how they're paid and their specific obligations under Reg BI.
Okay, so transparency first. No more secrets, hopefully. What's obligation number 2?
Number 2 is the care obligation. This means the broker-dealer has to exercise reasonable diligence, care, and skill. Basically, they need to do their homework.
Homework on what? The investments?
On the investments, yes. They need to understand the products they're recommending, the risks, the rewards, the costs, and crucially, they need to have a solid, reasonable basis to believe that recommendation is actually in your best interest.
Based on me, the client.
Based on your specific investment profile, your financial situation, your objectives, how much risk you're comfortable with. They can't just pitch something generic. It has to genuinely fit you.
Got it. So know the product, know the client. Makes sense. What's number 3?
The third one is all about conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
And this is where Reg BI really tries to, change behavior. Firms have to establish policies and procedures to identify these conflicts.
Like the commission example again?
That's a big one, yes.
Yeah.
Or incentives tied to selling proprietary products, things like that. But identifying isn't enough. They also have to disclose them clearly, and they must mitigate them.
Mitigate, meaning lessen the impact.
Yes, take steps to reduce the incentive for the advisor to put their interest ahead of yours. And in some situations, if a conflict is too significant and can't be effectively mitigated, they might actually have to eliminate it entirely.
Wow, okay. Eliminate. That's strong.
Yeah.
So actively reducing those clashes of interest. And the final piece. What's number 4?
The last one is the compliance obligation. This is pretty straightforward but essential. Firms need to establish, maintain, and enforce written policies and procedures designed specifically to ensure they're complying with all aspects of Reg BI.
So internal rules to make sure everyone follows the external rules.
Exactly. These aren't just guidelines, they're formal internal systems the firms are held accountable for. And it's really important to remember these 4: disclosures, care, conflict of interest, compliance. They're not separate silos. They're designed to work together as an integrated whole.
Right. A complete package for investor protection. Okay, so Reg BI sounds like a definite improvement. But the source material also flags that it's not quite the same as that full fiduciary duty we talked about earlier. What's the key difference there?
That's a really nuanced but important point. Reg BI definitely raises the standard of conduct for broker-dealers, no question, especially around managing conflicts and being transparent.
Yeah.
But it doesn't impose the exact same all-encompassing fiduciary duty that applies to RIAs under the Investment Advisors Act.
So still a gap, just maybe a smaller one.
You could think of it that way. Both standards aim to protect investors, but the traditional fiduciary duty is often seen as, well, perhaps more stringent across all aspects of the advisory relationship. Reg BI is more focused on the point of recommendation. However, it's crucial not to downplay Reg BI. It is a significant step up from just suitability.
And the key for me, as an investor,
The key for you is to understand clearly which hat your advisor is wearing. Are they acting as a broker-dealer under Reg BI for this transaction or recommendation? Or are they acting as an RIA under a fiduciary standard? They are now required to make that distinction clear to you, often through that Form CRS document.
Form CRS, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this regulation obviously shook things up for the financial firms themselves. How do they have to adapt? What changes did they actually make?
Oh, the impact was pretty substantial. Institutions really had to take a hard look at their operations and how they deal with clients. A lot of firms needed to review and, in many cases, redesign their compensation models.
To reduce those problematic incentives.
Exactly. To reduce the incentive for advisors to favor products that pay them more rather than what's truly best for the client. We also saw a massive effort to update client disclosure forms. The most visible part of that is Form CRS.
Yeah, customer relationship summary. The shorter one.
That's the one. The idea is to give you key information services, fees, conflicts, their regulatory obligations in a short, plain English format right at the beginning of the relationship.
Easier to digest than a huge document, hopefully.
That's the goal. Beyond disclosures, firms also had to enhance their processes for reviewing and approving investment products. More diligence to ensure products can be recommended under the best interest standard.
So better gatekeeping on what gets offered.
Sort of, yes. And internally, they had to strengthen their supervision and compliance systems. More oversight to monitor if advisors are actually adhering to Reg BI. And of course, there was significant investment in training.
Training the advisors on the new rules.
Training advisors, updating their communication tools, making sure everyone understood the new obligations. And the consequences for getting it wrong are serious SEC enforcement actions, fines, reputational damage, not to mention lawsuits from unhappy clients.
Now, our source material has this FinCrime intelligence link. Reg BI isn't primarily an anti-financial crime rule, is it? So how does it connect, even indirectly?
You're right, its main goal isn't fighting financial crime like money laundering or fraud detection in the traditional sense, but its focus on transparency, suitability, best interests now, and managing conflicts. It inherently strengthens the overall ethical and compliance culture within a firm.
How so?
Well, when firms have to be crystal clear about fees and conflicts, when recommendations need thorough justification based on the client's best interest, and when everything needs to be properly documented, it just creates a less fertile ground for shady practices.
Makes it harder to hide things.
Exactly. It makes it tougher for things like mis-selling unsuitable products or promoting outright fraudulent schemes to go unnoticed. It reinforces good documentation, clear communication, ethical conduct, all of which indirectly contribute to a healthier financial environment with less room for misconduct.
So it's like raising the tide of good practice lifts all boats,
All right.
including pushing back against potential crime.
That's a good way to put it. It fosters a culture where doing the right thing for the client is paramount, and that has positive knock-on effects.
And this isn't just a one-time thing, right? The SEC is keeping tabs on this.
Oh, absolutely. Reg BI wasn't just launched and forgotten. The SEC is actively monitoring how firms are implementing it. This is ongoing.
What does that monitoring look like in practice?
It involves things like regular SEC examinations of broker-dealer firms, specifically looking at their Reg BI compliance. They issue guidance updates, FAQs, and risk alerts based on what they find.
So they're learning as they go, too.
In a way, yes. They see where firms might be struggling or where interpretations differ, and they provide clarification. They also conduct targeted investigations if they see red flags or receive complaints suggesting potential violations.
So firms can't just rest on their laurels.
Definitely not. It means firms need to be constantly vigilant, continuously reviewing and refining their policies, procedures, and supervisory systems. They need to adapt based on new regulatory guidance and emerging risks. Things like reviewing their internal controls, checking client documentation, ensuring their training is up to date. It's a continuous process.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Reg BI, it's clearly a major shift for broker-dealers in the U.S. The core idea is making them put your best interests first when recommending investments.
That's the heart of it.
And it does this through these 4 pillars: being transparent with disclosure, acting with care, managing conflicts of interest, and having robust compliance systems.
The four legs of the stool working together.
Right. And while we've noted it's not exactly the same as a full fiduciary duty like an RIA has, it's still a much higher standard than the old suitability rule, offering significantly more investor protection.
A definite enhancement, yes. It's a really important piece of the puzzle for retail investors today.
So for you listening, thinking about your own financial situation and the advice you get, maybe the key takeaway is this: knowing about these best interest rules gives you power. So here's a question to ponder. What are the most important, most direct questions you should now be asking your financial advisor about how exactly they meet these Reg BI obligations for you? Use this knowledge. Be an empowered investor. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Reg BI.